It's good to see everybody. Lauren, glad you're here too. Sarah, glad you made it. I shouted everybody else out. Matt, glad you are also here. A lot of people from across the pond today.
We're going to 63rd and Wallace. That is where the castle was. It is kind of weird that they built a post office where the castle was. I will say this right here. And as we go more through the story, because I read Jeff Mudgett's book and he talks about going into the post office and actually finding some letters down there, like behind a fake wall. And he says that the reason he was allowed down there is because no one working at the post office would ever go in the basement. Oh, the basement of this post office right here.
They should do a Ghost Hunters episode on it.
I'm sure they have. I don't know, since it's a federal building. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it is kind of weird. This was a hotel, the castle, H.H. Holmes Castle. It is kind of weird that it is now a federal establishment and has been that way pretty much since the real castle burnt down.
Oh, it burned down?
Probably because somebody would have made it a tourist attraction otherwise, I would imagine.
But there's
but also like you had the Pinkertons in that last episode, which were kind of like the Secret Service. So I'm sure that H.H. Holmes was involved politically enough like to have this set up ahead of time.
Maybe. That's a good point.
Like maybe not necessarily being a post office, but like he would turn over his property to the federal government if they did not convict him or kill him off.
Yeah. I'm going to show you the castle layout real quick on live chat here, but I want to tell you, we're not going to get into the castle, its secret rooms, its dungeons, its the vat of acid, all that shit into a later episode. It's just too much. Like we're still in the shallow end here. But this is the layout of the castle, just so you know what we're looking at here. So what you have is this is all built from the ground up, and a little bit about 3 stories. The first story is nothing but businesses. Most of them ran by H.H. Holmes. Most of them not legit. As you'll see, this entire building, every inch, everything inside was built for free because H.H. Holmes is a swindler and he would take out loans. He would get contractors to come in there, give them promissory notes to build something and then not pay. So the entire castle was actually built with no money. Anyway, so the first floor, you would have businesses. You would have a jewelry shop, which is where we're going tonight, and a barber shop. You would also have like he created a glass bending shop. Now this is stuff that he would create to swindle money. There was literally no legit business in this whole hotel. The upstairs, being the second and third floor, were hotel rooms, and that's where you get into the trapdoors, the chutes that go down to the dungeon type of shit. That's where he killed everyone. But right now we're actually going to the first floor in the jewelry shop, and that's where I want to start the story, because we know that this was probably one of the victims we're talking about tonight of H.H. Holmes. A lot of it is speculation because H.H. Holmes, he even changed his story 100 times. So
Angelin says, I don't know why, but I thought it was bigger. I did too. When they call something a castle, it better be a castle.
Right.
Like
a moat and everything.
Well, I'm just saying, like, they could have just called it his murder building.
Well, he was even calling it the castle.
It's like a triplex, you know?
Well, it sounds like he has a Napoleon syndrome. Like he had to have a castle. Like, no.
You know, it's funny. If you were back in that day, you would have fell for him under his hypnotic suggestions.
Actually, I'm not prone to hypnotism.
I'm also not into mustaches.
I like mustaches.
No, I can't do it.
I think they're charming. It depends on the person, though. I think.
Nope. Sorry, I don't do facial hair.
Matt says White Castle. I like facial hair. I do. Not. I don't like long beards. I don't like that. But a nice groomed beard or scruffle. I like that.
I can't open this.
I like facial hair, but only on women. To women as yet unaware of his private obsessions, it was an appealing delicacy. He broke prevailing rules of casual intimacy. He stood too close, stared too hard, touched too much and too long, and women adored him for it. Now, if you would ask any of his classmates growing up, H.H. Holmes, Herman Mudgett, was not a ladies' man, could never get laid. No one would ever believe it. He had a lazy eye, and back in the day, day, the lazy eye, so if he would look at you, one eye would not follow the other.
Right. And then you have to ask him, what eye are we supposed to look at?
Awkward.
That, back in the day especially, I don't know, maybe even now, was considered, if you had that, like kind of shifty, because you don't look at people in the eye. So when you're doing business with someone and someone's not looking you in the eye, you think they're kind of shifty, maybe kind of a grifter or something. So, but he had that disorder. So even having that, he had to learn how to still be able to hypnotize and pick up women like he did. And there was a lot of women that came through this castle. So we're going to Wallace and 63rd Street. It's there today. It's a post office. It's been burned down for quite a while, and then they put a post office there. The time we're going to is 1890. There was a big sign up that said E.S. Holton Drugs. Okay, this is before Holmes. This is before the castle. This is before everything. The castle's not there. Before the World's Fair, everything. E.S. Holton Drugs. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple different versions of this story right here, and you'll see by doing that how hard it is to keep everything straight. But this sign, E.S. Holton Drugs, he enters this pharmacy, H.H. Holmes, straight up the train, never been to Chicago. He's here now. He is a doctor. He is a very renowned and proficient doctor with a high aptitude in dissection.
That's interesting.
He was trained by one of the best surgeons and, who did dissections in the whole nation at the time. He walks in to this little pharmacy. It's a mom and pop business, and he sees an elderly woman sitting behind the counter. Now, all the papers that you would read from the 1800s to the 1900s say what I just said. He walks in and there's an elderly woman. However, we know now that that woman's not elderly. She was in her 20s. So that is one of the reasons why it's kind of hard to map this story out. Can you read from Eric Larson? Eric Larson wrote a book called The Devil in the White City. It's a really good book. It takes both Holmes, H.H. Holmes, and I forget the other guy's name, but the guy who basically created Chicago's World Fair.
Got it.
And the Chicago's World Fair, if you don't know, is where it was the spot in the United States picked for everyone across the world to come in and see all the advancements of technology. Lights were a brand new thing. Cars were pretty new. Like they were to come in and see all this stuff. Investors would pour in here, kind of like, a South at Southwest type of
it was
conference
a
today.
big festival.
At the time, Inglewood, which is where this is, Inglewood, was extremely prominent. This is where all the millionaires would hang out, like in today's terms. But now, obviously, it's run down, crime-ridden type of city,
I do have a question, though. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to derail, but he was a renowned surgeon, but he had a lazy eye. So that's kind of a hardship to get over, right? He didn't have the best vision.
Well, I mean, as we get through the story, like more and more, you'll see that. And it reminds me a lot of this story we did with this guy named Nico Klaus. He was this self-proclaimed vampire who would sleep in the cemetery when he was a kid. He even snuck into Jim Morrison's cemetery, or his
grave.
No, what do you call it? Mausoleum or whatever. So H.H. Holmes was the same. He was enamored with these corpses, like enamored. There's stories which we'll talk about where, like one in particular, where he got caught while in medical school. There was an awful smell coming from his dorm, and the house lady went up there, rummaged through his stuff, and under his bed there was a box, and inside the box was a dead fetus.
Oh, kind of like Brian Cohey, but not.
That he had brought home to do some extracurricular work. He was just enamored with these corpses. And he would be the guy that would be in, the first day of class. He kind of like the class clown. He would bring a real human foot, and he got in a lot of trouble doing this shit, obviously. But anyway, So anyway, Eric Larson is the guy that wrote that book. So can you read that first one?
From Eric Larson, he sensed vulnerability, sensed the way another man might capture the trace of a woman's perfume.
So at this point, he's going by H.H. Holmes. He walks into E.S. Holton Drugs, and he is immaculately dressed. I just got off the train. I move into Chicago. I'm a doctor. He went to Ann Arbor in Michigan, and so that's a very high prestigious, degree. I'm a doctor. He smiles at her. He makes her feel, confident and good inside. He's very enthusiastic about the future. The Chicago's World's Fair. It's, isn't this a great time to be alive? And he's talking to this receptionist who turns out to actually be Elizabeth E.S. Holton. A lot of people thought it was Mr. Holton, but it's actually her pharmacy. Mr. Holton was in fact upstairs dying from cancer at the moment. Now she is late 20s and her husband's upstairs suffering and dying from cancer, and it's getting worse. And he can sense that. He knows something's not right here. So he walks in and he talks to her. He makes her feel kind of like enthusiastic about the future. He woos her. He smiles at her. He says that he's so sorry that her husband's going through this and that she's going through this. And she begins to pour out her emotions. It's been so hard. We had all these plans, and the pharmacy, you would think everything would be okay, but caring for my husband upstairs and running this pharmacy full time, I can't. I'm at my breaking point. So at this point, Holmes, he kind of senses that he should, as a sociopath, he should probably, water his eyes a little bit, cry a little bit. He doesn't give a shit that the guy's upstairs. In fact, that's good for him. That's an opportunity. He says, with your permission, I can make this small pharmacy a thriving establishment, giving you the time and resources you need to focus on your husband, as he transitions. Now, eventually, Mr. Holton died, and Holmes offers the widow money for the store, saying that she could even live up in the second apartment.
He couched his offer in prose that made it seem as if he were proposing the purchase not to benefit himself, but solely to free the grieving Mrs. Holton from the burden of work. He touched her arm as he spoke. After she signed the deed over to him, he stood and thanked her with tears in his eyes.
Almost immediately, he puts up the H.H. Holmes pharmacy sign. Now, here's a quick run through of his dealings with finances and this stuff. He doesn't actually want to pay for anything. So he offers her money. He's usually not going to pay it. However, what he did was take all of the expensive items and he basically liquidates them. He goes around town and sells them. He also does the same thing with different businesses around there. For instance, there was this multiple bike rental companies at the time in Chicago. He would go to each one, rent 2 bicycles from each one, saying, I'm a doctor, just talk them up. Because, we didn't have credit reports back then, social security numbers tied to your credit. That wasn't a thing. So it was largely based on if you think the guy is good to pay it. And as a doctor, a young, handsome doctor, of course, it would be good to pay it. Mm-hmm. He would get the bikes, the 2 bicycles, and immediately sell them and then not even try to pay the guy back. Wow. Most of the time, he would use an alias when he was signing over things like that. So when they came to collect their money or to sue him, I don't know who that is,
Yeah.
Or he would sign someone's name who he knew, but someone that was living in Kentucky or South Carolina or somewhere else, so now they have to go find them, and usually it just was not worth it. See, today we have credit score, so you can't do that because people just wouldn't lend you shit.
Right.
But back then you could do it if you were a talker, and he had loans all over the country. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't get killed off way before he hanged, because of all the creditors. For instance, as we'll talk about, he bought a vault for the hotel when he finally builds the hotel. This pharmacy we're in now is actually across the street from the hotel that he's going to build. But when he gets the hotel built, he gets this vault put in, this massive vault, and he makes a credit loan application. Yes, I'll pay this much every week, this, that, and the other. Okay, that's great. They install it. He starts putting up the walls. Everything's good. They come to collect their first payment on this big vault. And he says, you know what? I'm just not going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you. You can take the vault back though, because I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you a cent, but go ahead and take the vault back. But if you even scratch one of these walls, I'll sue you. So you can see how he made a lot of enemies. They knew they couldn't take the vault back because they would have to tear out the wall and he would sue them. And he did that with effing everything. Everything in that hotel, he did it. He would order fixtures and stuff like this. And as soon as, and he would get them on credit, nothing's bought. As soon as they would be dropped off the buggy in front of the castle, he would already have someone coming up and buy them for a cheaper price and then not even pay the manufacturer back. This happened with he literally got the entire castle built for free.
Wow.
Anyway, very shady. Anyway. Yeah. So going back to the story, this guy, he is talking his game, and this young woman has now agreed, okay, yes, I'll sign over the pharmacy to you. The deal is simple. Sign it over. He agrees to pay $5,000 or whatever it was. He's never going to pay it, obviously, but now he has the pharmacy. He says you can live upstairs, which she does for a little bit, and then he starts selling off all the, expensive things in the pharmacy. When he doesn't pay, it's just oh, well, I'm not going to pay you. You're not going to be able to do anything about it because no one's going to take him to court. You know what I'm saying? But soon he did start making that pharmacy thrive, and many, many single women came hanging about that store. Now, we don't know what happened to Mrs. Holton. From most accounts, the husband ended up dying from cancer, and then H.H. Holmes did something with her.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
He told a lot of people that she went to California visiting a friend, but we actually do not know what happened to her. One of the books I've been reading says that he had mapped Miss Holton out in California and that she's still alive, but honestly, or not still alive now, but that he didn't kill her. Yeah. But it was just one of the other ones that we just don't know. My money would be on he killed her.
Same.
Brandon says it wasn't me, it was Patricia. Isn't that from not Glass, it's part of that trilogy. Split, right? And then there's a third one.
I did not watch those.
So
I haven't either, but it's on my list.
The H.H. Holmes Pharmacy is a thriving business. He is very entrepreneurial. He is selling his own mineral water, right? Oh. Stuff like that, which was popular, but it was
straight from the tap.
Maybe if he started selling alkaline water, we'd all be better off.
It wasn't even straight from the tap. It was straight from the
sewer.
Straight from the city's water main. He had tapped into the city's water main, said he had told the city multiple times that he had his own artisan well. He tapped into the water main, then flavored the water, made it real blue and sparkly, and then sold it for a huge markup as mineral water. And it was just, it wasn't even tap water. He didn't want to use his own water. He tapped into the mains.
Wow.
I mean, you kind of have to admire his entrepreneurism, but not
a weird way.
But not murdery. Just kind of not admiring the murdery part of him. But he's very ingenious.
But
he's a schemer.
He's literally everything in his life is like that. But that's what made him successful, obviously, I guess. Anyway, at this point, the Holtons are out of the way. He has complete ownership of this new pharmacy, and it is thriving. At this point, you have a lot of women coming in to Chicago, getting off the train, knowing that this is the place that they can make a good living. This is where everyone's going. This is the spot, right? This is where everyone's going. So much opportunity here. So you would have these young women fresh out of high school, even some with some secretarial jobs that literally get off the train and go from shop to shop, seeing if they can get hired. Now,
even back in the 1890s, they were hiring women?
Yeah. You would need secretaries,
That's true, I guess.
That's what it was back then. Secretaries, nurses.
Well, like women weren't going to college then.
No. Think about this. All right. So maybe not big businesses, but if you walk into a pharmacy, you're some old man and there's a pretty young, attractive 20-year-old there behind the counter with a beautiful smile, like you're going to be more inclined to buy stuff, you know?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
a shop girl.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what he wanted. And a lot of these victims will be shop girls. Now, Ned and Julia Connor is who we're focusing on tonight. They were a young couple just coming in from Chicago. Ned was actually a jeweler. He came in to inquire about a job that H.H. Holmes was looking for. He wanted to start his own jewelry shop in the hotel. You know, the bottom's all businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So he started a jewelry shop and needed a jeweler to come and manage that. That's where Ned comes in. He brings his wife, Julia, which we don't have a picture, but apparently this is the best we got right here for Julia. She's kind of hot, I guess. I don't know.
She looks like Lizzie Borden. That almost looks like a sketch of Lizzie Borden.
Does it?
It does.
I mean, anyway, so she walks in here. Now, you got to remember, she is married to this guy named Ned, a jeweler, and they have a daughter, a little daughter named Pearl, who apparently was the sweetest girl in the world.
Brandon says, oh no, Jen is obsessed now. No, I was just saying that she looks like Lizzie Borden. That's all I was saying.
All right. Well, as soon as she walks in, like all the other girls you're going to see, H.H. Holmes is affixed with her. She is beautiful. He's never seen anyone so gorgeous. So she walks in and he's got to have her immediately. There's only one problem. Ned's in the way. Ned's kind of a pushover though. He is a jeweler. He makes decent money, but he's no doctor and he's kind of a yes man.
How many people are born named Ned, do you think?
Nedward?
Ned Flanders.
What is the full name for Ned?
I don't know.
Or is that the name?
I don't know. Just don't
because
know.
you have Ed, which is a short form of Edward, or Ted, which is a short form of Edward.
Or Theodore. Ned, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Or is Ned a short form of Edward? Or I mean, like, what is the origin of that name? Shrimp says Nedward, yeah.
Is it? I don't know.
No, it's not.
No, that's what I just said.
It's not Nedward. That's not right. Anyway, they have a young daughter, Pearl. Ned actually walks into the barber shop, sees H.H. Holmes getting his hair cut, and Holmes didn't even acknowledge this guy until he mentioned that he would work for $2 a day, which was pretty good. H.H. Holmes will pay him $2 a day plus room and board, and yeah, that's fine. Then he goes and sees that he's with his wife, Julia, and now he's enamored. He has got to have her.
From the Chicago Daily Inter-Ocean, July 26, 1885, Holmes was then living on the second floor, Ned later recalled. As you went upstairs and you went up those winding stairs that run in the bay window, Mrs. Loomis was then his housekeeper. Holmes's wife was away, I do not know where, and then there was a young man that was a drug clerk who was working for Holmes, and he was at the table. There was just the three of us at dinner.
All right, so right there we see that H.H. Holmes was also married at this time. He was married. His wife, Myrta, was living in the castle. So she was also seeing Holmes hitting on these random secretaries that he would hire.
Mm-hmm.
He began using Ned almost immediately. For instance, he had Ned sign his name to a bunch of promissory notes that Holmes said he would pay with interest. These are notes for loans for, like, let's say the marble countertops and the staircase rebuilding and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
All these promissory notes, he had no intention to pay, but he would use other people's names, like Ned, for instance. Hey, Ned, sign these. Now, when they come to sue anyone, they have to come to Ned. Usually, Ned would never even know that he's in some kind of litigation because he's going to move on and it's going to be hard to contact these people. And he did this with everything. Anyway, he starts having him sign all these things and then he just defaults on the loans like everywhere else. Julia Connor, even though she was married with child, started to become swept under Holmes's hypnotic spell. She was working in his pharmacy. She was the secretary. She was getting paid, minimum. But hey, her and her husband and daughter get to live in the hotel for free, and she gets to, have a real job of selling, trinkets or tinctures and stuff like that. But according to Ned, Julia got jealous every time a a woman walked in looking at jewelry, she would get jealous of her husband, Ned, even though Ned, quote, even I didn't notice her hardly. The jealousy got so bad that Julia more than once threatened to take poison and kill herself. At this point, Holmes starts to see this kind of discontent going on, and he starts swooping in. He starts making Ned run these errands, and he starts giving Julia extra work. Eventually, he starts taking her around the castle. Eventually, he makes his move and starts sleeping with her. Now they're in a full-on affair. Can you read the trouble?
So if it's not sex, it's like not a full-on affair. How would you rate that?
I'd rate it pretty fucking awesome. What do you mean?
No, but I mean, like, if you're having an affair with someone, like.
Well, you got to remember, his wife is living. Edward Holmes was married. Holmes was married at the time.
Right, but I'm saying, like,
to a woman that lived upstairs.
Would you call it? At what point would you call it affair? When he starts to catch his feeling? When he catches feelings, or like when he starts sleeping with her? Like, what would you call an affair?
He never catches feelings. He's using everyone, even Julia Connor. The reason I'm doing Julia Connor's story is because this is the first victim that we know of. There's probably more, but the affair would go like he was trying to pull her away because I don't know why. He didn't have any feelings for her.
He just wanted her.
He just wanted her. Yeah, that's so. And then he got her. He thought he could have anything.
The trouble first started through jealousy on her part, said Ned. We had several quarrels. Holmes acted to me as if he tried to keep the matter straight between us at first, but afterwards I learned differently. My wife seemed to take up with him right off. Holmes seemed to take up with her too.
Ned started noticing this stuff, and this will really tell you Holmes's personality right now. Even though he's got this woman all for himself right now, and Ned knows it, he's going to put the nail in there even harder with this next quote. You'll see what I'm saying.
From the Chicago Daily Inter-Ocean, he told me something no man on earth could have known if he had not been intimate with her, Ned recalled. He could have never got that information in any other way.
So now Ned, who was living with his wife and his 6-year-old daughter, working for H.H. Holmes, making him money, so is his wife, is now seeing his wife having an affair with this young, handsome doctor. Holmes calls him in one day and says, listen, Ned, I'm going to give you the chance to get out of here. I don't want to see you again. Julie and I don't want to see you again. We just want you to get out of here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you a chance to own your own drugstore. All right. And to do that, all you have to do is sign this piece of paper. Now, he did own this little drugstore, and this wasn't anywhere near the castle. It was a couple blocks away. So he could own this for only $2. That was how much he was signing it for.
$2.
It was kind of take this and get out of here. We don't want to see you anymore type of shit. What Ned didn't realize until months later was that the pharmacy was actually heavily in debt. It owed a lot of creditors, which is now under Ned's name. He's the sole proprietor. Not only that, the day that Ned signed his name to the paperwork, that evening, Holmes went over there and raided all the expensive medicines out of the pharmacy.
Dang. You know what you should call this episode?
What?
Better Off Ned.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, because that's where that quote came from, Better Off Dead. The movie Better Off Dead with John Cusack and the paper boy where he needs his $2 and he's like literally off a cliff. He's like, $2.
Well, there you go. That could be a one. Good one.
Sorry, I just came to me.
So, but anyway, Ned's out the way. So now he's got what he wants, Julia. At least until another secretary walks in to take Ned's place. Another very attractive, this time blonde, secretary to take the place. And now Holmes wants what he doesn't have. And this is kind of not a good thing because at this point, Julia comes out and says, guess what? I'm pregnant.
Oops.
And Holmes is like, oh shit, we got to have an abortion type of thing. And that was not heard of back in the day, right? And he's only given a few abortions before. Now, while this is happening, Holmes is still taking out promissory notes under Ned's name and basically ruining the guy just for spite. I mean, he is just ruining this guy and he's not even in contact with him anymore. All right. Also, while having an affair, right when Julia says, hey, I'm pregnant, Ned's sister Gertrude Connor comes into the picture and is looking for a job. So now he's going to try to bed both of these, Ned's sister and Julia. All right.
Now he's getting a little brazen here.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we know about what happened to Julia. Julia says, hey, I demand marriage. I can't be a single woman with your child and not be married.
Mm-hmm.
I've already left my husband. You need to marry me.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Holmes has a wife and she's upstairs. You know, she's living there. He's like balancing all this shit, right? They don't know about each other or...
Oh, she doesn't know about the wife?
Well, I don't know if she didn't know or whatever, but she was
with his child.
No, Myrta was his wife.
No, Julia was pregnant with his child.
Exactly. Right. Now, Myrta also didn't know about Holmes's first wife, which they were still married at the time too, which we're going to get to that later.
Oh, so he's a bigamist.
Yeah. He just never divorces the old ones.
That's like that documentary I just watched on, I don't remember what channel, but about this guy that has like a whole bunch of wives. It's current. I mean, it was really good. I don't remember the name of it though, but I'll get back to you on the Discord with it.
What was the name of it?
She doesn't remember, she said.
But I will find it. I will follow up on the Discord with it.
All right.
It was very good.
She is demanding a marriage and he doesn't want that, especially doesn't want a kid. So finally he says, you're right, Julia. We do need to get married. And she's happy. She's so elated. This is the best thing ever. You look at me. So she is now excited and she starts planning for this, this grand wedding because she doesn't know that this guy is literally heavily in debt that he's never going to pay. But there's creditors always coming up, demanding money. She just thinks that, this young, handsome doctor, who has his own brand of mineral water.
And a lazy eye.
He's going to take me to the stars, you know what I'm saying? So
Fly me to the moon.
He says, okay, I'll marry you under one condition. And that condition is you get an abortion. Now, unfortunately, I can't, no one can tell you exactly what happened. He didn't confess directly to this murder, but...
Of the child?
Of both.
So he wanted her to get an abortion that he was going to perform, but he was really killing her off because he didn't want her to tell anyone about her and the child that he murdered, because he said he would marry her if she had an abortion, but then if she had an abortion, then she wouldn't be pregnant with his child, so technically he wouldn't have to marry her.
Well, we know that he killed her. That's what we know because he changed the story twice. He said, and he confessed once, that I was trying to do an abortion and it killed her. We don't know what drugs he used, but he did give her a drug. Most likely it was laudanum, which he would use. He would give a high dose of laudanum and that would kill off anyone real quick. However, some have speculated that perhaps he really did botch the abortion and kill her. But I don't see it. I think he killed her on purpose.
I would agree with that.
We honestly, this story is hard to do because I don't want to present wrong information, but also we don't really know.
It's an old
So
case.
we can speculate that this is blah, 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 blah. The facts are that this woman died while she was receiving an abortion from him. However, we can speculate that he intentionally murdered her.
I can speculate
in the operation.
I can speculate this from his confession from another murder, including a child. This is what I really think happened. He goes and gives her this anesthesia, which is a high dose of laudanum. She dies, which is what he wanted. Pearl, remember she has a daughter, Pearl, who was 6, sees her mom dead, and Holmes, knowing that he was already got to kill Pearl anyway, does it, and he does it by choking the life out of her, which he goes into great detail with another child doing the same thing. He gets great pleasure from that.
Choking the child?
Choking the child.
Well, I wish he hanged that day.
He's not a good person.
He is not a good person.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, this is what we do know from this story. Can you read about the human blood?
I mean, can we really argue the fact that anyone that we've ever covered on this case has been a good person that committed a crime?
Yeah, Gypsy Rose, Shayna Hubers.
They're all female.
Courtney Cleaney.
She's not a good person.
They're not good people.
Human blood was in the castle, bespattered from one room to another. There was found in the castle by the detectives and a medical expert a trail of blood leading from the doorway of the dining room of Mrs. Julia L. Connor to a sink in the same room, from there to a dark chamber where she and Pearl formerly slept, and from there to the inside of the door opening into the bathroom where a secret trap door was, on the baseboard of that room above the trap door, and down onto the secret staircase which led to the false elevator shaft and thence into the basement.
There, they started finding bones. Now, detectives will find a lot of bones and a lot of blood stains in the murder castle. They'll also find trap doors. They'll find like floors that drop down into the dungeon, stuff like that. A lot of stuff that's in the post office.
Like a carnival at the Chicago World Fair.
Yeah, kind of. They'll find torture chambers. It reminds me a lot of that case we did, the Petio case, where that where you're just killing those Jewish people, but he would put them in like the room and gas them and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
What we do know about these murders is that he took a lot of pleasure in murdering. So you can pretty much assume that anything he did to like prolong the death type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. Can I ask a question that is going to sound really dumb coming from my mouth, considering we've been doing this for what, like 6 years now?
I mean, if you want to have people perceive you that way,
that's fine. I don't care. But like, is there a term for someone who is like, and I probably know the answer to this, but you know, my alter ego is coming out a little bit right now. We'll name her Drunk Jen. I mean, we already know that she's visiting right now. So, like that gets sexual pleasure from murdering. Is there a like something file or something whatever?
Like a sadist?
Not a sexual sadist. No,
Like
that's
from the act of murder, like the murdering gets them off.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe horngry?
No,
Not horngry.
Not quite it.
Masochist?
me file. Shram said.
JK.
Okay.
From the Black Hills Union, August 2nd, 1895, more bones found. Chicago, July 26th, before the police had been at work in an hour this morning, 2 more human bones were found motoring in the damp earth in the basement. With them was a bit of discolored cloth, apparently a portion of a woman's dress. One of the bones found, a shoulder blade, was apparently that of an adult, while the other, a socket bone, was smaller, apparently that of a child. The police, by discovery, were confirmed in their belief that the skeletons being uncovered are those of missing Mrs. Connor and her daughter, Pearl.
So, like, I mean, no one really knows how like that shit went down, to be honest. It was probably just like I said, though. She demanded a marriage, and well, he's already married, and no, we just got a brand new secretary, and she's hot, and I want her, so you're done. Now, he did a lot to cover his ass. This is one of the things that's really smart on his part. As you'll see when he's in prison, he denies all of this, and he always says, well, she went to Kansas, and he will say stuff like this, and he will actually hire lawyers to go find her, knowing that it's a fool's errand. But it makes him look like sort of he's innocent.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as we find her in Kansas, my name will be cleared. I have my top lawyers working on it, you know? So he always kind of diverts people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's really how he covers his tracks. He actually writes Julia's mother about 11 months after he killed her. 11 months after he killed both her and her 6-year-old daughter. He writes the mother, and I think he's getting sexual pleasure off doing this shit, like writing the mother, stuff like that. Like he's getting some kind of enjoyment.
Like knowing that he killed her.
Exactly. Because he writes the mother and says, quote, will kindly communicate with Mrs. Connor to say her for me that it is absolutely necessary for us to hear from her with regard to the suit in which she is interested as a witness. And that's all he wrote to the family. You know, they're saying, oh, Julia has some creditors or something in a suit that she had signed her name to, you know, under Holmes's direction. Now they're coming. So can we find her? Like, is she at her parents' house? She at your house? You know what I'm saying? So now he can bring the letter to court and saying, and say stuff like, I didn't kill her. I mean, why would I write her this letter trying to find her? I've been trying to find her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he's always diverting. This is from one couple that stayed in the rooms. You can rent a room for the Chicago World's Fair. This is one couple that stayed in one of the rooms. Quote, we went to live in the Holmes house on the 1st of Monday, May 1892, Mrs. W.P. Doyle later told the press, and took the flat which had been occupied by Mrs. Connor. When Holmes took us in to look at it, it presented a remarkable appearance. In the dining room, the table was standing untouched after a meal, fried eggs, bread, butter, honey, and other things. The strangest sight was in the dining room. On the floor and chairs was the clothing of Mrs. Connor and her child. A doll was laying on the floor, and Holmes quickly shoved it under the bed with his foot. The bed had been used since the last time it was made up. On the dresser were neatly arranged a lot of toiletry articles, combs, brushes, powder boxes, and other things. The minute I saw them, I felt that there was something wrong somewhere. Holmes had told us that Mrs. Connor had left suddenly on the receipt of a telegram saying that her sister was dying in Davenport. It occurred to me instantly that no woman would leave for a trip, however suddenly, without taking at least some of the toiletries which were on the dresser, for they were indispensable to her. We found the bureau drawers filled with Mrs. Connor's clothing of every kind, and it was all neatly and smoothly put away. The order in which everything of hers was, except the clothing she had taken off before retiring, made me disbelieve from the first of the story of Holmes that she had suddenly gone away to Davenport. So, and every secretary that will come in, a new secretary will come because he's got to fill that role. Thank you so much for applying. You know, the last secretary I had, she ran off. She met this guy. They're getting married. You know, like
Making himself look bad.
He is like,
or just feel bad.
He is like living this, man. And that's what's hard about the story, because I think he like gets confused in all his lies.
Can't keep it straight.
Exactly. But so I wanted to do that story just on the Connors, because there's a lot of episodes here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I know that wasn't as, murdery as
but it was
maybe you wanted, but
you know what? Like it is so fascinating. I feel like, this is kind of the beginning of his
we started at the end and now we're at the beginning,
right? But it's like you can see his evolution of a monster.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this one story I was going to talk about in the next episode, but when he was a child, what got him into seeing medicines and stuff like this is, he was bullied because he has the lazy eye.
Right.
Two of his peers, bullies, I guess, who were bullying him, shoved him into the science lab one afternoon after school and shoved him inside of the closet that had no light, no illumination. And they also shoved a real life skeleton, a human skeleton, in there with him, which to any child at 10 years old would be freaked out by that.
Yeah.
Like that would literally screw you up for the rest of your life. They found it quite odd that at first he was screaming, because it was dark. But when he saw the skeleton, they found it quite odd that he wasn't screaming at all. He was just really interested in the makeup of the skeleton and the anatomy of it.
Yeah.
And he literally preferred to be there. That's why he was so good at dissecting, because he just loved the human body,
Interesting.
So.
Wow. I will say that now they have a corrective procedure for lazy eyes.
I did not know that.
They do.
Really? I didn't know that. So I guess back in the day, it kind of made you look shifty, so no one would do business with you.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about like the Frankenstein movie, Mel Brooks' Frankenstein with like Igor.
Yeah.
Like... it is hard. I just watched something recently. I don't remember what it was that I was watching, where there was one of the main characters had a lazy eye, and the other main character was like, I didn't want to ask, but like, what eye do I look at? And eventually the character was like, the right eye. Like it's just, it is kind of something that's like, I don't know.
I know that story wasn't as gruesome as y'all probably like, but we had to get it out the way. That was like the first of like we know affirmative victims, I guess. I didn't want to get into the murder castle stuff yet.
It's just kind of sad to think that one of his first victims was his own child.
Well, so he probably killed a lot more before that, but like
That's what we know.
Confirmed though that we have from him.
I mean, he's been like, so he
didn't he start with like fraud in other places, or did that happen also after?
No, he's been frauding since he was a little kid. Like there's stories from his teachers.
He's like one of those kids that goes sells those roses downtown.
Yeah.
That wants you to pay $20 for a rose. They like hand it to you and they're like, here, this is for you. And you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. And they're like, okay, that's $20. And it's like, no, I don't want this. And like, no, you took it, so you owe me $20.
No, here's what you do. When someone offers you a rose like that,
I just say no.
No, you take it, you grab it, and then you go, oh my God, it had a thorn in it. And then you put like some fake blood and then you sue them.
I think John's probably the one that's therefore more like AJ for coming up with that. So, well, I can't wait to get to more HH.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I will say, Shram, you might like this. So H.H. Holmes, when he was in medical school, he had a name given to him because he never showered and he was always around dead bodies.
Stinky boy.
No. His name, what his friends would call him, was Schmegma.
Ew.
Remember Schmegma?
Yeah, we remember.
Yeah.
The guy that had the...
We got it. You don't need to say anything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it
Well,
for today. I know I've not released episodes all week. I know.
so it was my fault.
Talk about
Don't
it.
worry about it.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Well, hopefully it will be back to normal and we'll do a few this week. That's the plan.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, good night, you lovely, lovely people.
Kind of run this shit.